committee meeting of the Edenton Town Council. We will follow our agenda this evening, which includes a special meeting agenda that is attached to our overall agenda, and we will deal with the special items first. That being said, I'll turn the presentation of those 4 items over to our erstwhile manager, Anne Marie Knight.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item on your special meeting is a budget amendment for the current year budget. I know it's only July, we're only 1/12 through the budget, but we're already requesting an amendment. And you'll recall last meeting we talked about the benefit of having capital project ordinances, large projects that are going to take more than 1 fiscal year to complete. Well, here is an example where a capital ordinance would have helped us. We learned this from our coach team at the LGC, but in order to close out and finalize the grant for the repaving of the fuel farm at the airport, we're asking you to amend the airport budget. There's revenue will come in from a grant from the Department of Aviation to reimburse the town for the engineering expenses that were required to monitor and check the paving work of the contractor. So Virginia prepared the budget ordinance, and we're recommending approval, and we are going to make sure when we have another large capital project at the airport that we'll set up a separate ordinance for you, so you won't have to be bothered with these types of amendments.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Chair will entertain a motion to execute the budget amendment as presented.
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed, no? All right. Next item, please.
Mayor, as we all know, June 30 came and went, and we are closing out that fiscal year. Virginia prepared several amendments to the budget, and we gave you a report in the agenda review memo that explained what the budget amendments entail. Quickly, there's a $5,000 revenue adjustment that needs to be made in the administrative department budget, and we're proposing to transfer funds from the police department salary and wage to balance out the admin accounts. In the garage, we had an additional fuel purchase late in the fiscal year, and then also in the general fund to help balance another large fuel purchase in the garage. I think one was for diesel fuel and one purchase was for gasoline, but recommending a transfer from police salary and wages of $16,000 into those various line items in the garage account. And then a very minor transfer is needed in the water operations budget. Well, actually, we're going to take funds from the water operations budget and balance out $2,400 of expenses in water and sewer maintenance. The airport fund, we're going to show the revenue, increased revenue received from DOT of about $1,100, and that will offset some minor expenses in the airport fund, and then also a late in the year purchase of jet fuel for the airport.
All right. Having heard those items explained, Chair will entertain a motion to approve those budget amendments as just described.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any further questions or comment? Hearing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, no? Okay, thank you. Number C, item C, rather.
Mayor, actually there's a second amendment that needs to be made as part of item B. The budget amendment, we're correcting an amendment that we had presented to you back in March when we closed out the project ordinance from Hurricane Matthew. It should have been a 4-step amendment, and we had presented a 2-step. We just took the funds from the project ordinance and transferred them to the general fund. But Virginia, in reviewing some things with the auditor, said we need to go back and transfer, appropriate funds from the project ordinance, and then officially close out the fund by crediting that same amount. And then she has done the same thing for the general fund, where you show the revenue and then you credit to the general fund.
Very good. Chair, entertain a motion to execute that budget amendment as well.
So moved.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further questions or comments? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. All right, thank you, ma'am.
Mayor, we had previously reported that the North Carolina Water Infrastructure Authority had approved our pre-application for about $450,000 to extend the water line on Peanut Drive to Paradise Road. And this will be a big benefit to our industrial park. It will provide redundancy in the case of any type of an emergency. And also, I know the fire chief is happy to see anytime he sees a loop instead of a dead-end line. The pre-app was approved and a final application is required, and we're working on that. And the final application requires a preliminary engineering study. They want to make sure that the project is feasible from an engineering standpoint before the state will give final approval to the project. So the Wooten Company has submitted a proposal to do that engineering study for us in the amount of $7,500. And I'm pretty sure that if the project is approved, that we will be able to get reimbursed for this expenditure.
Okay, engineering services are now up for a vote, so the chair would entertain a motion to that.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second to approve the engineering services as described to enhance our water main extension capabilities. Further questions or comments? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. All right, that too passes.
Mayor, the last thing is a request for guidance that was received by the Executive Director of the Board of Elections. He called and said that his board is going to be meeting in August to set the schedule for one-stop voting or early voting for the municipal election. And the board asked him, bless you, to seek feedback from the town council on Saturday voting. I think that is optional, the way the law is currently written. And if you want to recommend to the board that they provide staff so that voting could be held on the 2 Saturdays that would be permitted in October, they would like to hear that. You could do one Saturday or no Saturdays. Ultimately, the decision is the Board of Elections, but they're asking for your recommendation. And he did inform or want you to know that there's a bill moving through the General Assembly that possibly, that if approved, would change and allow, or not allow, but would mandate Saturday voting on the Saturday before the Tuesday election. Right now, the Board of Election under state law cannot use that Saturday as an early voting day. But there's a bill in the General Assembly that, if passed, would dictate that. So,
How much voting activity happens on the Saturdays in the years past?
you know, I was not able to pull records and see by dates as to how much activity happens on a Saturday.
Well, this 12 to 14,000 that you've got here, That is for the entire thing, not just for those 2 Saturdays, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think people ought, I think the more voting we have, the better. I mean,
Absolutely,
I'd say
I
this.
agree.
Emery, I think you left out one of the options. You could have 2 Saturdays. You said 1 Saturday or no Saturday. You could
I'm
have
sorry,
both.
I wasn't clear. You can have both Saturdays?
Yeah.
One or none,
1, none, or both.
yes.
You want a motion?
Wait a minute, I got a question first.
Okay.
What's the cost? It's 8 o'clock to 1 p.m. for Saturday voting. Do we know the cost?
I don't. I tried to find from the invoice from 2017, and I couldn't pull that information up today.
Okay.
I don't think that the poll workers' expense is all that much. I think your big expense is the training, when they have to go to class, they have to go to Raleigh, the printing, the advertising.
So you don't think we're saving that much
So
money?
it's just a little hourly thing for
Yeah.
the number of Saturdays we choose to put in motion. Okay. All right, council members, speak up. What's your pleasure?
I move we do it both Saturdays.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to bring both Saturdays into play. Any further question or comment? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, no? All right, that carries as well. So with that, we could have 3 Saturdays. If the state law passes, that would be the one prior to the Tuesday election as well. Okey-doke. All right, thank you all. That concludes our special meeting agenda. We'll move now into our committee meetings, but before we do that, I would like to introduce Mike Nichols. Mike is here with us tonight as the head of our electric department. Mike came through a process whereby Anne Marie interviewed numerous candidates for the job. As you recall, we engaged the services of a firm to help find our new director, and they came up with a great one, we think. So, Mike, could you stand up and say a couple of words?
I appreciate being here. Had nothing but positive experiences in the previous trips here, and this time I've been accepted and look very forward to working with you and for you. Together we're going to have an electric department and a city functioning department that's to be proud of. So I appreciate your help and all the kind words. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. We look forward to having you on board as well. Okay, now we move into our committee meetings for this evening. We'll have 3 committees to meet, and it'll begin with our administrative committee, which is chaired by Councilman Biggs. Please, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. We actually have 3 items on the agenda tonight, and I've got a feeling we're going to probably scratch one of them.
No, I'm sorry, I just got a message. Tyler Bream had car trouble, which he blogged about, if you read his blogger, but evidently he still had a little, but he's on his way, so maybe if you want to ask
Okay, we'll
Hood.
move on down to number 2 then.
Yes,
How about
thank
that?
you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And that is on the draft covenants and neighborhood redevelopment zones, and I think our attorney is going to give us an update on that tonight and what we can do and can't do in redevelopment zones. Is that correct, Mr. Attorney?
Councilman Biggs, I'll do my best. Fortunately, Anne Marie and Elizabeth are much more immersed in it than I have been, so I want them to chime in. But again, the whole process is to try to put some covenants on properties that are in these redevelopment zones, distinguishing 2 different properties, ones that we feel like, or somebody with knowledge feels like contributes to our history, culture, archaeology, anything that's pro. That way we're calling it a contributing structure. Anything that's just a vacant lot or a normal piece of property or a house that needs a rehab that really doesn't have much add to the history of the thing is a non-contributing structure. And we've got 2 sets of covenants for each. One applies to the historical ones, and those are a little more stringent in terms of trying to make them comply with both the Edenton Preservation Commission, the Secretary of Interior standards, things that preserve what it is that makes them special. The other ones are more basic bricks and mortar, what you can do and what you can't do, subject to the codes, and mainly there to give people a time limit. Say, you buy it from the town, then start your work in a year, finish in 2 years. We're talking about lots of different amendments to make them more user-friendly, one of which would be to let the town give somebody a year's extension of time if they need it to finish up. Some of them have been shared with people that are doing those kinds of things in our community already, and to get their pros and cons. I think the general consensus, at least Anne Marie, from one of our private type developers, is that the contributing factor restrictions may be a little onerous. They may be a little overkill, a little more red tape than people want to undergo if they want to just undertake to rehab a structure in town as a private investment. So we're sort of gathering those kinds of comments and filtering them through, and I'll let these ladies speak in terms of what they're hearing and what they're seeing in terms of the covenants, to try to make them user-friendly and not onerous, but encourage people to give us a good product.
I'll start, and then Elizabeth can chime in. Thank you, Hood. There's a concern that somebody who wants to invest, somebody who wants to restore, having to go before our preservation commission, which we try to make that user-friendly, but it can be intimidating to some, and then also requiring, depending on what the Edenton Historical Commission review and approval process is. So we reached out just today to the Edenton Historical Commission and asked them to send us a copy of their covenants that they have on properties, kind of see what their process of review and approval will be. I mean, I can't imagine it's the whole commission has to review. It's probably a certain committee. And I think that was the main thing. I think Elizabeth and I wanted to reach out to a couple other people who are doing development work to get their input.
Another example would be PNC, and because the cotton mill has private covenants on that, and then they have to come before the Historic District Commission also.
It's
So
not
they does
unprecedented,
it.
but you want to make it user-friendly. So, Elizabeth, did you hear other things?
I think y'all both addressed what I've heard. It's just to make it as user-friendly as possible and not a deterrent for people who want to invest in the area.
So what we'd like to do is get a little more feedback from potential developers and then review the commission's covenants and come back to you quickly, because I know you're anxious. You want us to get moving on selling the properties. I think we're close.
Yeah, if they're using historic tax credits to make this work, they have to follow those Secretary of the Interior standards anyway. So it's hopefully that historic tax credit that we all lobbied and signed those letters in support of, hopefully everybody will use that, so they get about a third of it back in the credit.
I have a question. Is it consistent with what you would have to do if you were building outside one of the, if you took a project outside one of the redevelopment zones, but in the historic district? Are the two consistent, or is this a separate?
What we've got for contributed structures right now is a double whammy. You gotta go get the EPC COA from the EPC. You likewise gotta go to the Historical Commission and get their approval. And that's probably overkill. I mean, that's probably a double oversight that maybe we don't need.
But that's in the
speaking out loud,
existing.
but I could see how somebody who had a place in the district that they wanted to redo may not want to have to tackle double approvals before they ever go get a building permit.
But if they're looking for credits, it'd be the best. It would be a very good learning lesson, because if they mess up and don't follow those Secretary of Interior standards, then they can't get them. I mean, it's, you know, it's either or. You can't do it a little bit. You gotta really do it. So I think that hopefully that's what these people are gonna do, is they're gonna use these credits to reduce the cost of the renovation substantially.
Reduce the cost of what, have a,
The renovation, you get about a third back in a direct tax credit.
When you were talking about the timeline, you know, whether it's a year or whatever we give to do the work, that's including interior and exterior, I'm assuming. Or do we have any, there's nothing we can actually do or say as far as what happens on the interior, I'm assuming.
I don't think we're doing any regulating on what's on the inside.
Gotcha, gotcha.
But what's the, to Steve's question, what is the date? Is it the date you get the CO or the date they quit driving
We
neighbor?
haven't really we have not specified that. That may be something to talk about, fleshing that out specifically.
Yeah, I mean, typically, it probably would be the CO.
And I think we would have some interior, I mean, every other covenant that any other community's ever written has got some like, especially like the Hannibal Batten building. It's got the most incredible woodwork in it. And number one, if you rip it out, you don't get your tax credits. That's, you know, buildings like that. So most covenants have some, if it has important interior features, you put that in the covenant. But you go through each, it's a building by building. So, and it's, you know, there are a lot of examples. I mean, if you look around the town, Pembroke Hall has them, Charlie Creighton's has them, the house that, on the corner of Granville and Church, that Steve Lane owns, has them, Larry Sellers' house has them. So they are all doing that right now anyway. So they have to get 2 approvals. So, I mean, they're in every house in the Mill Village. I mean, I think we have as many covenants per capita as any town in the state. Yeah.
So you're gonna come back to us with,
Yes, sir.
that'll work, that'll be fine.
But feel free to share them with your constituents and talk about them and let us, you know, that's part of the public input.
It might be nice to have a workshop and try to have somebody, maybe somebody from the State Historic Preservation Office, or come down and talk about how other communities are doing it.
And so since we're in that, why don't we move on to the progress report, if that's okay with you, Elizabeth, and then we'll come back to the media since we're already in this.
While we're waiting for the projector minute, Anne Marie and I have met in the last couple of months with some community leaders that have concern about minimum housing standards here in the town. And most recently, we met with some business leaders, talking with them about their concerns about minimum housing standards, as well as some concerns that they had about community appearance and what the community might come together and do and partner with the town in order to help us with our efforts. And in that process, Anne Marie and I kind of developed some slides to show what the town has been doing in the neighborhood redevelopment zones so that we could share that with these folks. And we realized that it was nice to see it all together, to see exactly how much we have done. And so we decided to share some of it with you. And this is progress in community redevelopment. So we'll start with our North Oakham Street redevelopment zone, and I'll go over some of the successes we've had. You guys may have noticed that Mr. Vince Berger has purchased this store that's next to the police station and has plans for an office or retail establishment there. And Corey and I met with him on site, gosh, probably half a year, 6 months ago now, to talk about some things we could do to make vehicular access in and out a little easier, and maybe also to restore some green space. As y'all can see, it's just pavement and sidewalk. So we're looking forward to seeing that open up soon. And then across from the police station here, the owners of the dilapidated house, I think it's the house that was on the cover of the plan, actually voluntarily took that house down that was in unsafe condition. And then, as you all know, earlier this spring, the fire department did a controlled burn on North Oakham Street, I think that's 203 and 205, and removed especially this unsafe building and a smaller unsafe structure beside it. And we're in the process of working with Winston-Salem State University Foundation for the town to acquire those vacant lots.
Elizabeth, who did you say bought that little store?
Mr. Vince Berger, so he owns Pembroke Hall and
Okay.
some other stuff around. As you know, we also have, for a while, had 123 East Gail Street and 136 East Albemarle Street. And then just recently in June, we were able to close on 304A and 304B East Church Street. Again, this particular property was purchased through Winston-Salem State Foundation's partnership with us and the property owner. And then you all may remember that we have this lot here on East Gail Street that we're finalizing a lot exchange with Habitat for Humanity on. As you just heard from our town attorney, we're in the process of drafting these covenants or deed restrictions on these properties so that we can put them on the market, hopefully really soon. I think all of them are really good properties and ones that we'll have quite a few bids on. I expect that we won't have a bit of trouble selling them once we're ready. You may have also noticed some of the progress on the ODF Walker School. At the other end of North Oakham Street, I particularly noticed the progress with the windows were done, and that's going to be a great anchor for the other end of the street. It's just really positive to see that development going. And then we also thought we would highlight some of the private investment that we've seen in our neighborhood redevelopment zones and just on the outside over the last 18 months or so. So I think the first house that probably was redone, again, was by Mr. Berger, and it's this blue house on East Church Street, kind of across from Swain School. And then these two houses, were done by Mr. Dawson Tyler, also on East Church Street. And then this is the old St. John Episcopal Church, now St. George's Orthodox Church. And I think they've been concentrating most of their work right now on the interior, but they do have great plans for the exterior restoration as well. And so it's positive to see that much work on East Church Street all at once over the last year. We've definitely still got opportunities for continued success. As you all know, next to or behind the lots where the controlled burn on North Oakham Street took place is 145 East Gail Street. The town has been talking with the owner of this property for quite some time about her wish to restore the property and move here in her retirement. I think that she's finally on the cusp of deciding whether that's a dream that she can fulfill or whether she needs to sell the property so that it could be rehabilitated by someone else, and we expect her decision to be forthcoming. But I do believe that this is another house that it's a contributing structure. This is within our local historic district. So this is one that if it were sold, just like those houses that were redone on East Church Street in the previous slide, our local preservation commission would review plans for the exterior restoration. Y'all have heard a lot from Anne Marie about 116 East Gail Street, which is the Hannibal Badham Jr. house. We expect expect to be coming to you all soon to discuss the eminent domain process under the neighborhood redevelopment zone statutes that is afforded to the town council as it sits as the neighborhood redevelopment commission. The property owner has not contacted us back after months of working on trying to get a restoration plan from them. And as you can see, and if any of you have ridden by anytime lately, it's now or never. It's kind of in that spot.
Has the 60 days expired? I know we
It
gave her
expired last week.
last
Yes.
week. I know it's close.
Last week. And then, of course, Kadish, and Councilman Dixon can talk more about the successes, recent successes in this effort, but I feel like we're moving forward with that committee, and I expect to see good things soon from the fundraising efforts there. So those are our continued opportunities, and I show those two houses to note that I think these may be on the east side, the next properties that we'll look toward rehabbing or purchasing possibly. So Mosley Street, so on the west side of town, some successes that we've had. We did remove the abandoned mobile home through a partnership with Chowan County and the state with an abandoned mobile home grant removal program several years ago now. It's probably around 3 years ago now that was removed. We also demolished, there was an addition on this house that it kind of looked like two houses were connected to each other. I don't know if y'all remember that, but there was a little breezeway and then another building, and the breezeway and the attached building were in terrible shape. Those were demolished, and the house that's left, which is actually between this vacant lot and this kind of vacant lot, this one here, is currently under bankruptcy filing. So we're waiting to see what may happen with that property. It would be nice to acquire that, as we've seen a lot of private investment on West Gail Street. Just to highlight a few of them, these three here, this large house here and these two smaller cottages were done by Judge Meter and Mrs. Jennifer Harris recently, probably within the last 18 months or so. This house, again, was done by Mr. Vince Berger and was recently sold to a couple that are now making Edenton a part-time resident. And then we've also got these three houses which front or face the old Ashley welding site, so they face Ashley Park, and then have the creek on one side. Oops, sorry about that. Oops. And they, this fellow, Mr. Phillips, has been working with Judge Bean, Chris Bean, to develop a plan to rehab all three of those, and I've seen it, and it's done, so we expect that at some point soon we'll begin work on those. Additionally, on this side of town, in this Mosley Street redevelopment zone, West Church Street has seen a lot of investment, private investment as well. These three here are all done by Mr. Dawson Tyler. At various points, I think some of these have been his private residence, and then he sold the properties. He also worked on this property and home for his sister, which is down at the very end of the 300 block of West Church Street. And then this home, which is also on that 300 block of West Church Street, is kind of up on a little hill, sits on a really large lot that kind of goes down into a swampier area and backs up to the creek. It's a very nice lot and setting. And this was a couple that had made some investments and planned to rehabilitate this home, and then work has kind of stopped. So Anne Marie had heard that maybe something had happened with one of the couple.
Got sick, but they had come to a number of your meetings on the redevelopment zone, so we're gonna try to reach out and see what's going on with them.
They've done a lot of work.
They had a
They
great
have.
time.
It's kind of like to the point where everything that needed to be taken down has been done, and so it just needs to be finished, basically. But it's a nice spot. So opportunities for continued success on this side. I'll point out first this Foursquare here, which is right next to that shingle house that I showed you a couple slides back. So you can see the Foursquare right there next to this shingle house, and these owners have already, new owners have already started asking about, well, who owns this Foursquare house? This would be one that I would like to target on the west side. It does have some extensive title work that'll have to be done to locate all the people who may have right of ownership with it. So it may not be a quick one, but it's right in the heart of some private investment. So I think it would build a lot of good reinforcement that the town recognizes what other people have done on that street, and we want to participate and continue to help. And then these 3 homes here, we anticipate will be deeded to Winston-Salem State University's foundation. And I'm not sure that the university will have to partner with the town to sell those little cottages. They are the ones that are 3 in a row right on Mosley Street. And I think that they would go like hotcakes as soon as anybody put them on the market. So we look forward to seeing those rehabbed at some point soon. And then just to talk a little bit about what we're doing outside of the neighborhood redevelopment zones, that was also something that we were asked by these community leaders. They're pleased to hear of what the town has done and can do in that neighborhood redevelopment zone, but they want to know, well, what are you doing to enforce our codes outside of it? One that you may have seen recently is here on North Oakland Street. There were 3 brightly colored houses in a row. I've heard them referred to as dollar down houses right behind the high school. And one has been taken down, one is currently occupied, and this one is partially dismantled. Well, the person who had been working on it is no longer taking it down for the owner, so we need to reach out to the owner and get that process finished. Additionally, on Johnston Street here, and I know you all have heard from me before about this house. The house itself, we did get an engineer's report that says it's in an unsafe condition. We have been working with this property owner, are hopeful that we're going to have some success shortly. The daughter of the property owner has now acquired rights to the property, or I guess it's power of attorney for her mother, and is making decisions with regard to what happens on the property and has an intent to sell. So we're hopeful to see that garage perhaps relocated and the buildings removed at some point soon. But we're definitely working hard to talk with those owners. You may remember that we've been doing some work with boarding houses. As you remember, back earlier, or about this time last year, we were seeking compliance on this boarding house on East Church Street with some of the minimum housing violations that were present. That has been met. Our inspectors have inspected all of the other boarding house properties owned by this same owner over the last year, and 2 properties, came back with no violations. One came back with minor violations, which the owner addressed. And we also were able to inspect another boarding house a little bit further down the street from this one, owned by a different individual, that there were numerous violations that the building inspectors are working with the owner to rectify and bring into compliance. So just like the neighborhood redevelopment zone and those other minimum housing code violations, we've been working on the boarding house violations over this past year as well. Thankfully, we are going to be joined in August by our local government fellow, and we're very excited to have her come and work with us, and have planned for her to work hard on some of these community development issues. We feel like she can do some research for us to look at our existing town codes for opportunities to strengthen them, to check and see if there's anything that North Carolina General Statute allows that we're not taking advantage of, or perhaps disallows that we might need to remove from our code. Also want to have her investigate whether we can establish a rental registration program, and also this has come up several times in our meeting with community leaders, is education programs that we might help develop with EIC or the Edenton Housing Authority, that are both tenant and landlord education programs. So both tenant rights and responsibilities, and landlord rights and responsibilities. So she's got quite a list before she even starts, but we're looking forward to working with her. And so just to wrap up, in our discussion with some of our business leaders, they really emphasize what can the community do to come alongside the town and partner. Some of the things that they recognized after our discussion with them is that our codes are about minimum standard or minimum fitness for habitation. They're not necessarily appearance codes outside of our historic district. And one of the ideas that came up was a day of caring, so something that we could partner with both on a public effort side of things and also with our business community and nonprofits. To have something like a day of caring in our community where we can help those who might need some extra elbow grease or some paint to bring their buildings up a little bit as far as how they look. You can see we've got quite a list of partners already, always excited to add new folks to that list. So I think that wraps it up, unless y'all have questions. For me, happy to answer anything you might.
Any questions?
No.
Elizabeth, thank you so much. I mean, it's always nice to get good progress reports like that on initiatives that came through this council, and certainly y'all have, looks like you've done a great job with your local business people and certainly your allies and friends there.
Mr. Chairman, make
Yes, sir.
one other comment. I would just like to piggyback on what Steve just said. I do believe in my term here that the creation of the redevelopment zones through the assistance of the Holland Group out of Wilmington was one of the most constructive things that we've done as a governing body to help bring the housing standards up to a more livable and presentable condition. I think it's fantastic, and I echo the chairman's congratulations to Elizabeth and your efforts to keep those things moving. That's a lot of work.
Thanks again. Okay. All right, let's back up then. Tyler, we're glad to have you with us tonight to give us an update of the launch of the social media marketing project to attract new residents. So I'll let you go ahead and fire away. Thank you for being here.
Anne Marie asked me to keep it under 20 minutes, so I'll have you out by 8 o'clock, no matter what.
You're not the only one on this tonight.
No. I'm just kidding. I'm here to give you kind of a quarter, about a quarter of the year with this campaign. The 12-month contract has been up, and we've had some really exciting results. I'm excited to share them with you. Before we get into specifics, what I want to do tonight is to walk you through two things. The story that we're telling about Edenton, and then I want to walk you through how we're telling that story, sort of on a technical basis. Overall, the story that we're telling about Edenton is this. Edenton is an incredible blank slate on which you can build the next stage of your life in whatever way you want. We talk about 90 minutes of awesome in Edenton. The idea here is that Edenton is located in a uniquely incredible place where within 90 minutes you have access to world-class beaches and incredible day trips and an incredible metro area and whatever natural land that you want, it is here for you within 90 minutes. And I've lived in bigger towns, I've lived in bigger cities before, and I have not had the variety and the incredible diversity of opportunity that I've had here. And I'm telling the story specifically as somebody who's not from the area, to people who are not from the area, to show them how easy it is to transition to the area. And so that's the overall idea of the campaign. It is to tell the story that Edenton is an incredible place to choose to make your next home. Now, the process that we go through, and this is a little bit technical, I promise to try to keep it as entertaining as possible. It starts with a Facebook ad, which goes to an Optin Page, which goes to what's called a two-step authentication, with an opening email sequence, a weekly blog posted on its own dedicated website. We're going to go through each one of these things so you see exactly, kind of practically speaking, from the process of the subscriber, what it looks like and how it feels for their, from their perspective. But I like to say this at the beginning. This seems like a very complicated process, and in some senses it really is. From the perspective of the prescriber, however, it is a completely automated, totally simplified process, and one that almost everybody in this room has almost certainly experienced many, many times without realizing all of the pieces that go into the back end. Part of my job is to make sure that even though we're using 5, 6, 7 different services to run this whole process, that the end subscriber doesn't realize that we're using all of these different services to make it as seamless as possible. And the other thing is this. This has two primary objectives, this process. The first primary objective is this: to create long-term positive associations with the town as a brand. We all know that deciding to move to a new place for most people is a pretty long and involved process. Right? They have to discover the place, they have to decide, they have to find everything, find the moving company and figure out how they're going to get there, find a home, and the whole process. It takes a while to do that typically, although we wrote a series of blogs on Will and Jenna McKenzie over the last couple of weeks, and the blog that we started out there said Janet encountered Edenton, and then 2 weeks later they were on their way down here. I mean, it was like a no-holds-barred, spur-of-the-moment thing, and they did that more than 20 years ago. It was a really great story. What this allows us to do is to maintain consistent communication with people where we are not selling them anything. Now, I want to be clear. We are selling them something. We're selling them the idea of Edenton being an incredible place to live, but we're not flashing ads and billboards at them telling them to move, right? We're having a dialogue and a communication specifically designed around their interests. And the other thing is, this is a somewhat conservative approach to protect the town from people complaining that we are bombarding them with unnecessary sales messages. And we'll talk about a couple of ways that we're going to get a little bit more aggressive over the next few weeks. So we're going to start by looking at who we've targeted. Now, I want to say 2 things before I start this. Number one, we have made a strategic choice to decide to target people who are nearing retirement and at retirement for the simple fact that it is easy to lay clear demographics on top of one another to create a very specific and targeted message that resonates with them. One of the first things I learned when I got into this industry was an old copywriter line that says, always enter the conversation that is always going on in somebody's head. When somebody is considering retirement, they're asking themselves, do I want to live here for the rest of my life, or do I want to pick a new place? We've targeted people in 3 basic demographics, and this is the same no matter what, where we're looking, or no matter what sub-campaign we're talking about. They're at or approaching retirement age. They live in New York City or Washington, D.C., and we are targeting both males and females. Those are the basis of the campaigns. And the reason why we're targeting something so specific, and if some of you may have been opting in, or some of you may be reading our emails on a weekly basis, other ones may not be. But every email that we write, every blog that we write, every piece of communication is designed to show how Edenton is the antithesis of these places where they currently live. To draw the differences between the two. Big city, small town. High crime, low crime. You don't know anybody, your neighbors know you, and you know them, and everybody supports one another. Now, we add on top of these 3 basic demographics, these detailed targeting, and I want to tell you right now, I did not come up with these terms. I look at these terms, and they are borderline offensive, okay? I admit that, and I recognize that. Facebook came up with these. I'm just recording them. So I did not call people old, okay? Before you get mad at me, I want to make that clear. But what we do with these, and I want you to take the pictures, we take these 3 basic pieces of demographic data: age, where they live, male, female, put those together, and then we add a 4th or a 5th on top of that. So for example here, we add people who have expressed interest, say, in retirement savings accounts, and then they are pensioners, for example. That tells us that in addition to being at or near retirement, living in a place where we might be able to show our differences, they are particularly interested in a subcategory of stretching their retirement funds. Then we can, taking those additional pieces of demographic data, create specific ad targeting for people who are not only at or near retirement age, but we can say, in Edenton, you can spend exactly what you spend here on your tiny little apartment in New York City. Buy essentially a villa in Eastern North Carolina, create the world that you want, and your retirement funds are going to go way farther. We can take those same basic 3 pieces of demographics and then approach somebody who, for example, through Facebook interactions, because Facebook tracks everything that you do and look at and touch, somebody who is an avid golfer. We can take the exact same 3 pieces of information, add golf instead of retirement income, and create an ad specifically designed for the different hobbies that people like. So this is the targeted demographics that we're talking about. And I want to say this, everybody who we've talked to has had interest in identifying other demographics, other peoples, other businesses. We all know we want to get young families here who can provide tax revenue and community stability for generations, right? We want that. That's the gold standard. The idea here is that we can take these concepts, we've been able to spend a few months now testing and refining these concepts, and we can reapply them in other specific areas. And I'll tell you about how we're planning on doing that over the next few months. Any questions so far? I don't want to just throw things at you. So this is an example of an actual campaign ad that we are running right now. Town of Edenton, North Carolina. And this ad copy here has been the result of, we've run now 43 different ads throughout the course of that campaign, split testing, ad against ad. And so live the life of style that you deserve in Edenton after retirement. World-class adventures from the comfort and safety of a small, close-knit community. Now what's about that is this ad right here has bubbled to the surface because it identifies 5 specific things that are core pillars of the story that we're telling about Edenton. The life of style that you deserve, i.e. live the life that you want. World-class adventures, comfort, safety, small, close-knit community. It identifies many of those critical elements that we think sets us apart from other people and other communities. We see that there's hashtags here, and then we run what are called carousel ads, where we take pictures actually of Edenton, and they can actually scroll through and see Edenton before they even click the ad. These photos are by Kip Shaw. He gave us permission to use them. They're excellent photos. We chose photos that have a wide color palette, and show Edenton in all of its incredible beauty. And all of these ads go to an opt-in page. We've all been to an opt-in page. They're sometimes called squeeze pages or landing pages or whatever. This is an opt-in page. Come see why so many people are moving to Edenton. Retiring in Edenton, North Carolina gives you the ability to live the style of life that you deserve. Edenton has access to the Virginia Beach metro area, world-famous Outer Banks, world-class adventures, endless water, gorgeous woods, epic history, and incredible people. You deserve the very best. And it goes on down. This is just the very top. But the idea here is you'll see repetition, and that's the critical thing here. We have core pillars of our story. These are the things that we believe and we know make Edenton incredible. And so we use these same things again and again and again. It's not out of lack of creativity, but it's out of the idea that if the idea of world-class adventures triggers them on the ad, we want to repeat that again when they go to the opt-in page, because we want both of those ideas to be brought together to move them forward in the decision-making process. Any questions about that? No? All right. So when they opt into an email sequence, there's what's called a 2-step verification. Now, Google, Facebook, or Google, Yahoo, Hotmail, whatever email service you use, they use big data and they track everything you do with emails. Oftentimes, if you are checking your email on your computer, which is rarer and rarer nowadays with smartphones, you'll see that Google, for example, gives you, in your inbox, they give you 3 different sub-inboxes. There's your inbox, then there's like one for ads and marketing, and then there's a spam box. Google typically judges whatever email comes to your inbox and then auto-routes it based on your past opening and interaction with emails and email addresses. And then if that email goes out to 1,000 people, Google will watch every single person in their company that opens that email and will determine for every single email and every single email sender the value of that email. The idea is that Google wants you, or Facebook or Hotmail, they want to provide you the best, most optimized in email experience ever. So they will purposely take things away that they don't think you will like. And so what we do with a 2-step verification is we basically make sure that they actually want to receive emails from us. And so this is a part of our opening sequence here. It says, hey there, Thanks for signing up for the Outlook Edenton newsletter. Let me start by introducing myself, and this is where we start to tell our story, my story, in the terms that they are going to live when they choose here. I moved my family here. From the very first moments we arrived, we knew this was our home. We aren't originally from Edenton, but we've made it our life. And then we go in and again, we are reinforcing these same basic ideas. One weekend we're enjoying a waterfront music festival. The next we're soaking up the sun on the beach. We're a world-class symphony one evening, a bass boat the next morning. We get treated to glorious sunset over the water and cool mornings sipping coffee on the back porch. That last line is a little bit of stretch this week. But it will be true again, hopefully soon. But the idea here again is to thread this critical story that we're telling all the way through every single thing. We want it to be consistent from the very beginning. And everybody who opts in automatically gets an opening sequence. I don't do this, but you can, if you've ever gotten an email from a big company and they use your name, and you're like, how does somebody know my name? It's an automated piece of code that we put in there at the top of the email that takes whoever's name and puts it in there. I don't do it personally because people have a tendency to misspell their names. I did it one time. I probably shouldn't say this in front of all of you. I accidentally spelled my name Tuller, and I got emails for the next 6 months for Tuller instead of Tyler, and it was embarrassing. So they automatically get put into this opening sequence. It's several days long, and it tells that story incrementally throughout the process. And the idea is that each step of the journey, we're expanding that story a little bit, telling it in a little bit more detail. The last thing here is a weekly blog, and this is what comes out every Thursday between 10 and 11 in the morning. This one is from 2 weeks ago. The blog was titled Silicon Village. It was the third blog in a 3-blog series that featured the McKenzie family. The first blog was about how they came to Edenton from New Jersey. The second blog was about how Janet runs the farmers market and how the community itself banded together to build our new farmers market and how that has been an economic force in our community. And the third one here was talking about how the Will's journey into entrepreneurship and how Will's is just one story of a number of stories of incredible entrepreneurship in our community. We do a couple of things here. We're starting to do longer term storytelling where every blog starts to move people back and forth to older content. And we're also then creating longer stories that last multiple weeks, so that we keep users engaged to come back to hear the rest of the story. The last thing we want is then to get to the end of the blog and say, that's nice, I'm done. Because we now, in our modern culture, have the attention span of a goldfish. And we want to keep that attention, keep those loops open in their mind. So we're doing this, and there's all kinds of things. Our biggest problem with the weekly blog is that there's so much to talk about. We started at the perfect time of the year, coming from spring into summer, and it was exceptional. But I want to talk about the airport. I want to talk about the restaurants in our community. I want to talk about the businesses, world-class businesses that are founded here and have chosen to make their homes here, and how they do business all over the world, even though they live in Edenton. I want to tell more stories about people who have moved in for retirements, because that matches some of these demographics that we're looking for. I want to tell all kinds of additional stories. We just don't have the room for it yet. But we have time. And the beautiful thing about this is when things do kind of slow down, because our town is cyclical, things start to get colder, things slow down, we can take some time to really focus in on some of those other really interesting stories, because we do have world-class manufacturing and world-class businesses that are based in this community that prove not only the viability of individual families, but careers here in this community as well. So, before I go any further, that's kind of the 5-step process that people go through. Any questions or issues or clarifications you'd like me to make before I go on? Yeah.
Metrics. Can you tell us what kind of response you're getting to what you're putting out there?
Right here.
Oh.
Next slide.
Go, man.
How about that?
I made a conscious choice not to flood you with data points, but I did bring a couple of critical things. So far, as of early this morning, we've reached just over 28,000 impressions. That means, with Facebook, 28,000 times somebody has seen our ad. Now, it seems like a lot, it's still a fairly small number. Here's what I'll tell you about that. Our number one problem in Edenton is not quality of life, It's not community, it's not situation, it's awareness, right? People don't know about us. If more people knew about us, we would have a problem with too many people moving into town, right? Our number one issue is awareness. So 28,000 impressions is really getting us to that process where a lot more people are aware. 18,000 individual people through Facebook, this doesn't count Google, have seen an ad, at least one for Edenton. 18,000 different people. So those numbers are similar in that some people have seen more than one ad. Maybe they've clicked on it but not opted in. Maybe they've hovered over it, because Facebook will see, for example, if you're scrolling through and then you stop to look at an ad but don't click and then you keep going, Facebook counts a half a second view as an ad view and they'll show you the same ad again because they know you're interested in it.
Mainly from what geographic area are the 18,000?
Washington, D.C. and New York City.
Those two areas?
Just those two.
Just two areas.
Yes, and we, like I said, we targeted those two areas because we know we can tell a story that separates us from them, but also this allows us to test very specific demographics and then reapply them in other creative
Are most in the New York area? Or
It's about 50-50.
About 50-50.
About 50-50. Yeah. One thing I did mention earlier, part of the reason why we're focusing that is because there are so many people in our community where that is their journey, right? Okay, I know of at least 6 different couples over the last 18 months who moved down from Long Island, right? I mean, they were practically neighbors in Long Island and didn't know each other. They came down here because they loved the town. We know that that's a story that resonates with people, and that's a good, solid place to start and then expand elsewhere.
Mainly because they have water on both sides on Long Island.
Yeah.
And this is very similar here.
Yeah, yeah. And when you talk to these people, right, this is what kind of drove the narrative, is they're tired of exceptionally high taxes, high cost of living, and the fact that they don't know their neighbors anymore, right? There's no small knit communities anymore. You've got so much transience
And it's
everything.
congested.
Yeah, yeah. It's getting nearly impossible to make a life there. Where here, it's exactly the opposite. So we have, to answer another question, we have 224 unique conversions so far with this campaign. I would say the lion's share of those specific new conversions have come within the last 4 weeks. We've made a couple pretty significant changes that have really started to shoot us up, give us a lot of momentum. I actually get an email every single time somebody opts in, and there are days when I just have to shut my phone off because I get so many, 3, 4, 5 in an hour, which is great. It's a good problem to have. And then one other piece of critical demographic information, or critical campaign information, is 28% of our list is either engaged or highly engaged. What that means is about 30% of our list has looked at either 4 or 7 emails over the course of the lifetime of their subscription. It's really good. That's a very, very good engagement rate. I've seen well-designed lists that are between 8 and 10%. So the fact that we're hitting 28% of engaged and highly engaged is really good. I have a couple of tricks up my sleeve that I want to get going here that may pop it up above 30, which would be great. But I'm very happy with this 28%. Now, obviously, this is a subjective evaluation, but I would say we are about 80% of where I would want us to be. There's a couple of things that we're looking to do, and I'll tell you a couple of things we're doing to try to pop things up to another level, to improve our ROI on ad spend and things like that. But I have to say, overall, we're getting really good feedback. In fact, one of the most interesting things is I'm actually getting emails from new subscribers responding to blogs, asking specific questions about home prices in the area, moving to town and things like that. So it means we are talking about things that are really resonating with them, and I'm able to correspond back and forth. One lady was asking about, I was emailing back and forth with her. She owns a mobile grooming business in New York, and she is looking to move somewhere. She's in her mid-50s. She wants to move somewhere and settle that's outside of New York, and she was wondering if it would be a good entrepreneurial community for her. She emailed me on a Wednesday night before, it was actually 2 weeks ago, when that Silicon Village blog came out. I said, you know what, I think it'd be really good, and I want you to pay attention to the blog that's coming out tomorrow. It'll answer a lot of your questions. And so we're hitting a lot of really good things, and we're talking to a lot of really engaged people. The problem with all of this is, frankly, that, like I said before, it takes a while for them to make a decision to move, and so we've got to keep that conversation going. But the more good things we talk about, the more things we highlight about the community, the better. So does that answer your question about a couple basic
Yes,
metrics?
thank you.
I can blow the doors down with 1,000 pieces of information, but eventually they become meaningless. So, a couple of things that we're looking to do to improve. So the weakest area of this funnel, and to go back here, I'll go back so you can kind of see. The weakest area that we have right now is this two-step authentication. What we have, this is running really good. This is doing pretty well. And we're losing a fairly good clip of subscribers at this two-step authentication phase. For the simple fact that they opt in and then they get an email and they have to click on a link and then click on a button to say that they actually want to get emails from us. Well, every time you have to click a button, you're less likely to move forward. We do that, we put that in place to protect the town and so that people don't give us spam complaints and things. And so what we're going to be testing over the next couple of weeks here with this two-step authentication process is actually limiting or reducing it completely for a couple of weeks, and then tracking to see how new subscribers interact with us over the next couple of weeks. So what typically happens when you do this is your subscribers go up, but their interaction goes down, right? Because they're not quite as engaged or they get involved. And so the question is not whether this is right or wrong, but how do we weigh the cost and benefit on each side of the seesaw, so to speak. The other thing I want to do, and we started to do this a little bit, is, and this goes to your question, we want to create additional audiences for other cities. The last few weeks, everywhere east of the Mississippi has been the temperature of the surface of the sun. But in 3 months, it's going to start getting cold in Chicago. It's going to start getting really cold in Minnesota. We have a lot of people who meet exactly these demographic features in cold weather, high tax areas, Connecticut. We can take exactly the lessons that we've learned with these two cities and apply them very specifically to these other areas. And we're not taking a shot in the dark. We're not shooting from the hip, right? We're taking the clear data, the lessons that we've learned, and applying them in a new situation. So that's going to be a really powerful thing for us as we move forward. We're going to create long-form content. This is where we are integrating. As the website grows, as more and more blogs get put up, as more and more articles are going, and as we get more enmeshed with the current website structure of the town, cross-posting content and moving people around. Frankly, I'll tell you, I don't care if one person reads, if a subscriber reads one blog a week for 5 weeks or reads 5 blogs in 1 week. They've read 5 blogs. That's a real success for us. That means they've heard our name multiple times and heard our story multiple times. We've been able to tell them the story in 5 different ways. And so that's what we want to do. These long-form contents where we're referring back and forth to different things. And then optimize subject matter based upon the demographics that we're getting and based upon all of the information that people are contacting us about. For example, we're working on doing specific blog content on home prices and moving to town and how that stuff works. People are asking us about it. It only makes sense that we write content that's specifically designed around that. Obviously, the thing that we have to work on here when we're doing anything with businesses in town is keeping away the appearances of any sort of favoritism. So that's the critical thing that we are trying to navigate at this point. So that's how things are going. I'm interested to hear if you guys had any thoughts or questions, and then if you guys have any other information you want me to follow up with you about.
Yes, sir.
I just
Go ahead.
wanted to, I've shared with the council, but so that the public is aware, Nancy Nichols, our tourism director, and our former councilman, Bob Quinn, we meet with Tyler, we're meeting monthly to review when we get updates like this, and we talk about new content idea, new styles. I know we're interested at some point soon, hopefully with video and, you know, interviews with people that can tell their story, and Tyler will help weave that into the blog. So it's still real early, but I am really excited about the way things are gelling, and we'll continue, Nancy and Councilman Quinn and I will continue to meet with Tyler, and periodically we want to come back to you and give you reports and also continue to give us feedback. Councilman Biggs talked to us recently about the airport and how that would be a really cool topic to try to target additional air traffic and people who have planes who might want to move here, that kind of thing, so.
And I guess I'd like to piggyback on that and say that there are a lot of organizations which have all been just incredibly supportive, sharing content, working together, cross-posting things. It's been really exciting to work with them too, so they've been incredible.
Well, Tyler, thank you for all the work. Number one, I don't want to say I'm as dumb as dirt, but when it comes to some of this, I probably am dumb as dirt. But the numbers, as the mayor said, so what are the numbers?
Yeah.
That's kind of what we look at. We'll let you handle the handiwork, and we'll look at the numbers and feel good about them. And what you showed, I think all of us feel good about those numbers. And, you know, we just keep hitting them and hitting them and hitting them.
Yeah.
I know there'll be a lot of success stories there. So thank you for all your hard work.
Well, Edenton sells itself. I just have to convey the message.
Well, thank you much. Anyone else got any questions for him while he's here?
Gentlemen in the audience there.
I've had 4 families move in within a block of my house in the last few weeks. Do we have a way of bringing all that information, know who's moving in, and some way of responding to them as a community? Or is it sort of hit and miss? Do we have a welcoming, not wagon, but a welcoming way of recognizing new families? There's some way of putting that information on a major list so that we have access to that information.
Electric bill,
We
utility bill?
used to do that. We can talk with the chamber.
Chamber
where
used to do it.
through the town with new electric and water and sewer customers, that we would send a letter with information welcoming them. And we'd be glad to
The mayor would be fantastic.
talk to Wynn about helping us with that. Sure, good idea.
The welcome to town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Mayor, that's all we've got tonight.
Thank you, very interesting. Moving now to our next committee meeting for this evening, that would be Public Works, and that's chaired by Councilman Stalin, please, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. We only have one item on the agenda tonight, and that's the, several weeks ago, the staff brought to us a proposal from a part-time resident to establish a fully automated bicycle rental business. And doing that, the town would lease a small area of the lawn on the north side of municipal building. And we get asked a lot by visitors about the bike rentals, and we think that's a great location. Anne Marie, would you like to comment further on that?
Sure, I'll just briefly go through the slide presentation that Joe sent along. Sorry he's not with you tonight. He and his wife are still home-based in Colorado. And, but they come to Edenton periodically, and they wanted to give something to the community, and they have seen this bicycle rental business in other areas and thought it might be a good fit for them and for us. And, oops, sorry, I don't want to end it. It would be totally their business. They would purchase the bikes, and it's through a national company that offers this type of system all over the country. It's not the system where if you rent a bike and then you can just drop it anywhere. You have to bring it back to the home base, and if you don't bring it back within a certain period of time, your credit card is charged the price of purchasing a new bike.
Oh,
So-
that's the
a good-
catch.
That's a good incentive.
That's a good.
Okay, I was wondering how they get the bike back.
But it's totally automated. It needs to be in a location that gets a lot of sun because it's solar powered. We will not need to have any electric hookups. We get a lot of requests from our accommodations folks that, they want to offer bikes to visitors. Some of them have 1 or 2 bikes. And we know we had our merchants mingle meeting recently, and a couple of the merchants were asking, can't you get somebody to get into the bike rental business? And we've had different people to try. over the years, but we think this option really has a lot going for it and could be quite successful. The location, we looked at 2 locations, and the preferred location is right outside of this building on the lawn at the corner of West Water Street near the public art tree. It's highly visible. We think it would send a great message to our visitors, a welcoming, that yes, you're here. We know that you may be interested in renting bikes, and here we are. We hated to give up parking. That was another option. One of there are 4 parking spaces on the west side, and would have to give up 2 spaces, and we really weren't crazy about that idea. There's a picture of what the bikes look like. These were all the locations where the bikes are in place, where they're being rented and set up. And I think the proposal would start with, they would purchase 10 bikes. They don't really know our seasons, our weather, and we keep encouraging. We think there may be days in December where the bikes could be rented. Somebody said they would rent them and use them to take the Christmas tour, the candlelight tour. But they would be responsible for when their season ends, to move the bikes and store them off-site. We've been working with them on the improvements that would be necessary, mainly a concrete pad, a 10 by 14. We asked them to, can you turn the lights back on, please? To look at tying the pad into the material that's used at the public art base, that aggregate, and they're willing to do that. If you're willing to entertain some sort of a lease, I think that would be the next step. We've been trying to come up with what is a fair and reasonable price for renting that little 10 by 14 pad, and have some ideas based on square footage. Want to be reasonable because you don't want the land rent to not make the project work, but then again, it is prime space, so trying to come up with something that's fair and equitable. But if you're interested, we would want to go back and try to work with Hood on a lease and bring something back to you for consideration.
I think it's something that we should be very much interested in. We do have a lot of requests for people like that, and people that want to walk around the town or ride around the town. I think so if it's okay with you, go ahead.
I'm not on
That's fine.
your committee, but we don't have anyone else that's doing this, right? That's correct? I mean,
Correct.
in this.
Do any,
Well, and I'm just throwing this out for a suggestion. When we had the captain come in here with his little boat, and, we gave him a free area to get going, to try it, start with. I'm not on,
That's
but
fine.
this is something I would bring up at the next meeting.
That's fine.
Why don't we work something out with them for free for the first couple of years and make sure it's gonna work for them? Kind of like we did with him.
Excellent suggestion.
it's not a bad idea.
Totally, I think that's great.
It's great,
Yeah.
great idea. Do any of the inns offer bikes at all, do you know,
Not
to ride? Okay.
I think it's a good deal, but I don't think it's free.
We'll go back and look at what we offered Mark and see what we did.
So Sambo, if it's okay with you and Reverend Booth, we'll send this full council.
Absolutely.
I'm concerned about the safety. Is there gonna be, special places, special streets that they can ride on the street or ride on the sidewalk? And a lot of places have built special routes for bicycles and people walking. But some of the streets in Edenton is kind of tight for cars and bicycles. And what's gonna happen if somebody gets hurt that is not really experienced in riding bicycles? And another question is what happened to the helmet law that we had?
Okay, you've asked a lot of good questions. Let me try to make sure I can answer them all. We would ask that the business make sure that people renting the bikes know that there is an area in the downtown business district where bicycles are not supposed to be on the sidewalk. You're not supposed to ride a bike on the sidewalk from Water Street to Queen Street, I believe.
Okay.
So we'll make sure that's there. The bicycle helmet law, that pertains to children under what age, Chief? 16 and under, or under 16. So that would be something that they would need to make sure, somehow we'll have to ask them about renting, I'm kind of thinking they're not gonna rent to kids under 16, or how do you make sure that they have helmets, but that's a good point. And then, Chief probably knows, or Hood, but bicycles are allowed on streets, on public streets, so we can't prohibit them from riding on the streets, but we can prohibit them from riding on certain sidewalks. And then the liability, Hood?
I'm sure that whatever credit card you use is gonna have a complete disclaimer of any liability. Yeah.
So we'll make sure to check that out.
That credit card is gonna cover insurance if somebody have an accident or
In other
something?
words, it would be something, Councilman Poole, that this bike rental company would say, you're on your own. You're renting this bike. If something happens, you have no claim against us. It's all on you.
And there would be no liability for the town anyway, because we don't own the bikes.
So good question, and we'll follow up with the helmet issue.
That's all we have, Mayor.
Thank you. Last committee to meet tonight, excuse me, is our Utilities Committee, and that's chaired by Councilman Bond, please.
Thank you, Mayor. We have only one item tonight. In our meeting last week, we knew that the Department of Environment and Quality approved the Wooden's Company plans for specification for the repairs to the town sanitary system collection. In 2017, we received a grant from Golden Leaf Foundation to hire a contractor to clean and videotape our sewer systems. And the results from that videotape was sent to the Wooden Company, and areas were repaired and replaced the line. The town received $1 million zero-interest loan from NCDEQ for the repairing and replacing of these lines. The project is now up for bid on August the 6th, and by our meeting on August the 13th, we hope to be able to present to you who got that bid. He's impatient. Mr. Corey is on the money, and he's going to take it over from here. Do your thing, Corey.
Thank you, everyone else. I did want to give kind of a quick update on that.
Okay.
So we have worked with the Wood Company and Company Red Zone to do all the CCTV work that we have on the sewer system. And what that allowed us to do is identify areas of interest that were beyond repair, disrepair, or in need of repair. So we've worked with the Wood Company to identify exactly what project will include. This project will include roughly 3,500 linear feet of 8 and 15-inch gravity line that will be replaced. In addition to that, we will also be basically repairing roughly 5,800 feet of 6, 8, 10, and 15-inch line. This process is known as a CIPP process, and what this is whereas replacement is complete, dig up, replace the pipe. This CIPP process is actually where the pipe is actually cured within the existing pipe. Most people call this just slip line. And so, as you can see, we have a great deal of sewer system improvements that's going to be made as a whole. Along with the gravity lines, we're going to be working with manholes, very few point repairs, and also what's going to be included in this process, anywhere we make a repair or replacement, we're going to return those residential service taps back into service for those residents, so they will not be affected. The taps will be, replaced with no disruption in service for them. So we'll put everything in place, get everything ready, have the service ready to be tied in, so it'll be very seamless for the residents affected. So I'm sure you're all very curious about some of the areas that we're going to be working in. Just got this document last week and was able to get a digital copy today. This is really kind of a bird's eye view of the areas that we found were in the need of, the most repair. So if we start up near the north end of town, you can see that the Stratford, Hawthorne, Batham neighborhood, as my guys like to call it, Big Circle, and the Morris Circle area, which is my guys kind of a little circle. And so both of those areas were identified, and there will be major CIPP and some replacement in that area. What's interesting, basically spanning from West Hicks between Broad and North Granville, making its way all the way down to one of our larger lines, 15-inch gravity line that will follow basically the old railroad easement that runs through the old Weldon lot.
Ashley Weldon.
Ashley Weldon, Ashley Park, excuse me, which is in this area here. So we'll move kind of from northeast to southwest. Then also we have an area which continues and feeds into our main lift station that's near the Pembroke Circle area. We also identified that the area of the Mill Village, really between McMullen and Wood Avenue, basically the entire blocks there, would need some repairs as well as the intersection of East King and the South Oakland. Now, once we get further south in the town, we really run into where some of our larger problems or larger lines are. So most of these are pretty good size, whereas maybe in our northern area, a town may be something smaller, 4 or 6 inch. But as we move south, everything kind of flows downhill. So these will be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 areas that those sewer system improvements will be made.
Corey, in the Big Circle area, with these all, I know some of those streets out there are earmarked for road resurfacing. Will this all be done prior to any resurfacing of roads in that area?
Any resurfacing that will happen as a result of this or as a result of the resurfacing project will happen after the repairs are made to the sewer system. You don't want to get caught before the horse.
I will just say that the plan is for Stratford Road, Hawthorne Road, East King, 2nd Street from Stratford to Batham, and then a portion of South Oakham. Those streets will be resurfaced as a part of this project. So the coordination, Corey has been working closely with the Wooten Company. They know what we're working on in terms of our street resurfacing plan, and then making sure that this work gets done, and then those streets get resurfaced, so. A lot of moving parts, but I think we got it.
It is.
Yeah.
Very similar to our last resurfacing project that we had, where the town took on itself to replace West Peterson water service for a loop system. We were able to make sure that we got all that resurfaced after all the utility repairs were made. Same thing, just larger scale.
These addition to the water line is going down Paradise Road and going to tie into Peanut Drive and all of these other, and the sewer line. Are these in a plan that we might eventually expand the city limits?
Can't really speak on the expansion of the city limits. I know the town already has ETJ about a
So
mile
if we
beyond
keep
town.
going, we have to expand the city limits.
I would love to.
That's the purpose of having a town, to grow so that if it become in a higher bracket for the state is concerned, that you can get more money for grants, that you can do more things for the town.
And this is one of those opportunities, I guess, that we've utilized, I guess, the bracket that we're in to obtain funding. You may ask, why some of these numbers seem this way, and that's kind of part of the requirements for that funding opportunity. But we would love to have been in a larger bracket for water, i.e. Peanut Drive extension, or sewer, with the work we're doing now. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Truly appreciate it. If no one on the committee have any objection, Mayor, we'll send that to council, and that'll do it.
Okay,
Utility
thank
Committee.
you. And thanks to everyone tonight. We've completed our agenda. Again, it's a very constructive agenda relative to what this town is doing to correct measures that will ensure the future quality of life for our citizens through the basic services that we're charged to provide. As I mentioned in a prior meeting, so much of this is out of sight that a large percentage of our population, I believe, does not fully recognize or maybe even appreciate everything that is going on to upgrade these basic facilities, again, that have been in place for many, many years and do need servicing at this time. And we're very fortunate in terms of financial cycles to be able to get zero interest money. I mean, I remember joking about that when the opportunity first came up. Said, "Is that all we can borrow? Can we get some more?" So anyway, just to comment on what I believe the town is not only being attentive to, but now doing quite a bit to bring about those needed improvements. So with that bit of editorializing, we are adjourned. Thank y'all very much.